if you're here, it's because you're very interested in volunteerism. Some of you have done humanitarian work, and others would like to start doing humanitarian work. And we, like me, some years ago, and I had the privilege to have a person that I considered my role model, that is also a very good friend of yours, Dr. Steve Mackler. I didn't know how to start, and that happens with a lot of us. So we have to make sure that if we do good, we have to make sure that we don't disrupt the equilibrium of the area where we are going to so-called do this good. Because sometimes doing good, we can disrupt this equilibrium and leave the place a worse place than thinking that we did fantastic things. And this is a problem, and this is very dangerous. So we have to make sure that what we do is well controlled and well established with the local authorities, local customs, and so on. And I think Dr. Frank Serio is going to help us today in establishing some guidelines, just to make sure that when we do good, we don't do bad. Dr. Frank Serio, the floor is yours.
So thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you for the welcome, and it's certainly delightful to be here in Dublin. It's good for me both from a professional level, but also our son lives across the way over in London, so we've had a little family thing as well. And so what I'd like to do today, in the next little while, is just talk about what are these projects about. I know some of you have done this. Yesterday we had some presentations which were terrific. Before I came over here, I talked to Jill about, okay, what's going on in Europe, because I know what goes on in the States as far as these types of projects, but really had not a clear idea of what was going on in Europe. I tried to Google, dental volunteer projects, and all kinds of dental things showed up, but not so much the organizations. But Miguel was very helpful. Dr. Pavao was very helpful in sending me organizations, and so I have a little bit of that in here. But yesterday I thought was just terrific. Yesterday afternoon, to get an idea of all the different things that are going on, and it's no different than the States, where things are happening in little corners, and great work is happening, but no other people know about it because there's not a good venue for doing that. And I think that's probably one way the ICD can get involved in just flying the flags of flying each other's flags of volunteer projects and helping to network. And I think that's a lot of what we do. And so again, I want to thank Dr. Feeney, Dr. Cofferaro for the invitation to come and visit with you folks here. Some of what I have, Dr. Sam Olind, who's a retired oral surgeon in the States and works with a group called Christian Medical and Dental Association. He has provided some of the things. We basically, it's a very collaborative thing because a group of us get together and we pass slides back and forth to make sure that we give the best presentation possible. I'm going to talk about several products, portable dental units, some other things. I have no personal financial interest in any products that I'm talking about. So just make that aware that I have no conflict of interest in anything of which I speak today. I have relationships though with certain companies for things, and I will mention that. And this is what happens, as you know, we develop relationships as we go through life. And having done this now for over 30 years, I have developed relationships with certain companies. So, why are we interested in these activities? And again, we're focused, when I give these presentations on our section. And certainly, our motto is recognizing service and the opportunity to serve. And everybody in this room serves in one way or another. If you did not serve, you were not committed to service to the profession, none of us would be in this room. And that's for sure. Part of what we want to do is now get the word out to more locales about what the ICD is. I'll be honest, when I was invited to become a fellow in the ICD, I had no idea what the ICD was. And even for a couple of years after that, until actually Dr. Mackler roped me into things as well. And as Jill has found out, if Steve asked you to do something, there's only one answer, and yes, and that's it. So I got to know a lot more about the ICD. In the States, the the American Dental Association, and I work with them for many years, has done a lot of work on getting out the word on international volunteer projects, and actually has a steering committee that does coordinates volunteer projects, particularly training education projects, because teaching the teachers, training the trainers is something that really makes it go ahead. And so what we're hoping in the States is that the ICD becomes a go-to resource for those people getting involved, but don't know where to start. And that's what I said yesterday. The subtitle to this presentation is Jumping Off the Cliff and Landing Softly. Because back when I started this in 1982, there was no guidance. I had no idea I literally had no idea what I was doing. So at this point, what I'm going to do is just take a very quick break. We'll show the video and then get back to the meat of the day.
Integrity, leadership, service, these are the core values of the International College of Dentists. The International College of Dentists is the preeminent honorary dental society, the only one of its kind. The idea of an international dental organization was conceived in 1920 in Tokyo by Dr. Louis Odafe, an American, and Dr. Tsurukichi Akamura of Japan. The plans were refined and disclosed in 1926 at the 7th Annual Dental Congress in Philadelphia, and on New Year's Eve 1927, the ICD was born. The ICD now has more than 10,000 members worldwide from 122 countries. The USA section is the largest, with more than 6,300 members. The organization recognizes and promotes leadership and service worldwide. The process of becoming a fellow is very selective.
What we expect from that individual that's being nominated is to share our core values.
Each section will nominate fellows that are actually very distinguished individuals that have demonstrated leadership ability, professionalism, and excellence in their activities as a professional and also in their humanitarian efforts.
The ICD searches out those that fit the mold, those that have given service, those that are known to have the integrity.
Each year, the International College of Dentists welcomes new fellows into the organization in a special convocation ceremony.
My local component president nominated me. I think once you're nominated, the application process is really guided by the members who are already involved. And they really encourage you just to help get you through that process.
When I became a fellow, I can remember all the flags of the countries that are participating in the International College of Dentists in this worldwide organization.
When you stand there and you see everybody in their robes and their gowns and family members on the sides, and it's a sight to behold.
That's a memorable experience for people, and it was exciting, and it made you feel a very strong part of this organization, that you were now a part of these special people.
The ICD is involved in many programs that allow members to showcase their commitment to service, such as the International Collaborative Initiative, which includes the popular Student Exchange Program that shares knowledge and experiences among dental students of the global community. Volunteering overseas, programs that provide dental humanitarian support on a global basis. The Fisher House Project, providing emergency palliative care to military families housed at a Fisher House, while their wounded loved ones receive treatment at a medical facility nearby. Peace Corps exams, where ICD fellows provide exams for Peace Corps volunteers free of charge, in appreciation for their commitment to global service. Missions of Mercy, portable clinics in cities across the country at which volunteers provide free dental care for underserved people. The Great Expectation Program and Student Awards, mentoring professionalism by connecting dental students, faculty, and practicing dentists. Student awards are given for leadership to a graduating student from every U.S. dental school. And White Coat Ceremonies, a symbolic event that recognizes the dental student's transition into patient care. Many ICD districts sponsor a white coat ceremony at their respective dental schools.
The USA section established a foundation which would be independent from the section, but basically would assist the section with their projects and also be able to contribute to some of the broader projects from time to time. The section itself contributes significantly to the foundation. It also receives gifts and bequests and things like that that are obviously tax deductible.
The International College of Dentists welcomes the leaders of tomorrow, those who show a career-long commitment to service, humanitarianism, and education.
I think the special thing about the ICD is that the members themselves are just such a great group. They're so dedicated, their leadership traits, their service ability and what they've done for humanity and for dentistry and things like that are quite significant.
We have had so many people that are willing to take their time, give their energy, and provide that leadership that they've shown elsewhere into the focus and the alignment of the college, both internationally and in the United States.
One of the things that has frustrated me in dentistry over the last couple of decades has been an orientation toward money. The ICD typifies the antithesis of that, in which the organization is oriented toward the altruistic things and the service orientation.
So many of us get caught up in trying to build our practice, get the greatest and latest things in our office, and we kind of forget what we really got into dentistry for. And I think at this stage of my life, I don't want to wait till I retire to get back. I want to do it now while my skills are at their highest.
This again is not the end of your career. We want you to continue to provide service and leadership and to mentor, and that's what we're all about.
We're very energized, we're very energetic, and I just see great things in our future.
I'm proud.
I'm proud.
I'm proud.
I'm proud.
I'm proud to be a fellow in the International College of Dentists.
All right, so what are we going to do this morning? And so we'll talk about several things. You have to understand the context, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday. Context is key. And as Jill had referred to, yes, we plug ourselves in, and we can't leave the place worse off than when we got there. I mean, that just means we're being disruptive, because remember, we're plugging into communities that have their ongoing activities that go on with or without us. And so we have to make sure that we're very sensitive to that. So I want to talk a little bit about the international problems, what's the magnitude of the problem, and as most of us know, was Dr. Welton mentioned yesterday, dental caries is the #1 disease worldwide. And so certainly that's right in our bailiwick. The nature of volunteer activities, I'll talk a little bit about why we volunteer, the nature of the volunteer, and again, talk about context. Cross-cultural issues, which is one thing in the U.S. It's different in Europe, because in Europe it's very multicultural, because Europeans are certainly, it's just part of your life. It's that, in the United States, you guys have been to the States, the States is huge. And if we go the same distance from me driving to where I grew up in New York, I'd go through 6 countries here in Europe to go the same distance from North Carolina to New York. So it's a very different, type of thing. And so in the States, of course, our idea of cultural issues may be a little bit different than yours. Cross-cultural training, but this is something that's still valuable. There's an exercise called Bafa Bafa, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But if any of you have ever been part of something like that, it's really, it's very interesting to watch the dynamic of this. Also talk about different types of projects. We talked yesterday a lot about service projects. We didn't really spend a whole lot of time talking about teaching projects, training the trainer types of projects, and I'll get a little bit in more detail with that. And then how to get started, jumping off the cliff and landing softly. I know a lot of the folks in this group this morning have a lot of experience. They'll share their experiences yesterday, but in many cases you'll be taking this, and I'll be happy to leave the slides here. Obviously the video will be here, but some of you will be extending this to your colleagues back home, and people want to do it, but they don't know where to start. And that's the big issue. And most people are just not willing to basically take this leap of faith, so to speak, and do it themselves. And partly you don't want to anymore because it creates some problems. And so plugging into existing programs versus starting your own, we'll talk about that. The nuts and bolts of volunteering, opportunities, where to find them. Some of the U.S., I'll talk about some things here. Certainly, what are the things, how to volunteer in the U.S., and I'll mention several European organizations as well. So let's get started and talk about conditions around the globe. This was the first edition of the Oral Health Atlas that was published by FDI back in 2009. Did any of you guys go to the FDI meeting a couple of weeks ago? Anybody in Thailand a couple of weeks ago? So what happened 2 weeks ago was they published the second edition of this manual, and it's called A Challenge of Oral Health, A Call for Global Action. Whereas the first one really laid out what the problems were. I think the second one is saying, okay, now we can see what the problems are. How are we going to go ahead? You can find this, go to fdidental.org, and it's right on the homepage. You can click right onto it. It's a free download, so feel free to get this. And you'll see over the next 10 minutes or so, I'll be sharing some illustrations, both from the first edition and the second edition, because in some cases, the illustrations in the first edition are actually better for illustrating the types of things we want to talk about. So this is really, where are we? And this is something we have to think about. This, I think back to my early days of psychology, back when I was in college, and Maslow's pyramid and all that. And really, self-preservation is down here, and then the more esoteric things of life are up at the top of the pyramid. But from a professional perspective, where are we? We are basically towards the top of the pyramid. But in a lot of places, and I think this was mentioned yesterday by Dr. Morris, prevention is really what we want to deal with. Engaging communities, engaging health promoters, engaging local people, community leaders and things. This is where, particularly when we're going to places that have fewer resources, this is where we need to focus our attention. So there's a little bit of a paradigm shift in our minds, because we're trained and we're used to spending time more at the top of the pyramid. How do we get down to, how do we change our frame of reference to deal with folks really where they need it? And this is something I will mention several times today. It was mentioned yesterday as well. What are the felt needs of the community? We have to pay it. We have to listen to what the community wants. You can go in and do something, but if the community is not interested, it's not going to gain any traction. That's one of the issues that has always been a problem with the Peace Corps, is that somebody go in the Peace Corps and they go into a community, and sometimes if the project was something the community wanted, great. The project would last long after the Peace Corps volunteer left. But if it wasn't something the community wanted, it wouldn't necessarily occur. So we have to shift our thinking to the local context. And so again, just looking at this, where do we want to focus? We want to focus on things, in this area. Yesterday we talked about fluoridated water. Problem is, if you go to a lot of places, you don't, where are they getting their water from? And there's no way you can fluoridate it. That's why fluoridated salt is a very valuable alternative, as I mentioned yesterday as well. Very valuable alternative to fluoridating the water, and it's cheap. It's inexpensive and relatively easy to monitor, assuming that somebody wants to monitor it. So, looking at dentists, there are lots of dentists all over the place. The problem is they're not in the right places in some cases, and that is typical of every country in the world. Why? Because dentists go to places where they can make a living. Period. You have to be able to make a living. All of us how many of you folks here have done international volunteer things? Raise your hands. Okay. So we've done this, but we've done it from our excess, not from our substance. Because that is a contextual thing that's critically important. We're doing this, well, why can't they do it? The thing is, we're doing it from our excess, and we've been blessed to be able to have the flexibility both of career and of finances and of motivation and whatever else to be able to do this, but we all do it from our excess. If we were just scraping by, we wouldn't be doing these kinds of things. And so as we're going into other locales, we've got to keep in mind that, well, why aren't people, they're not there because they can't make a living there. Would you be there yourself if that's where you had to make a living? The answer would be no. You know, simple as that. Why do mom clinics exist in the United States? Why does the Capuchin Center exist here? It exists here because it's to help to care for these people. You can't make a living doing this. You have to, you know, Brendan does it because why? Because you have the capacity to do it. If you didn't have the capacity, you wouldn't. That's the whole point of doing all these things. And so you have to keep that in mind when you go to other locations. So there are dentists, you know, in lots of places, and dentists tend to move around. It's interesting. I was talking to Regina earlier today about how I was asking her, you know, what's the employment opportunity for dentists in Ireland? And she's telling me, oh, they go over to the UK and they go to Australia and they go all over the place. So it's not that, so Ireland is producing more dentists than the community can absorb at this point. And a lot of people now, that's part of the discussion in the States as well. But then you go to a place, what was it, Kenya we were talking about yesterday, with one dental school? And so, you know, that's a whole different deal. But the fact is, if there was more opportunity to support dentistry economically, there would be more dental schools, because obviously everybody follows the money. There's no question. Humans follow the money wherever that money happens to be. But this gives you an idea of where the dentists are. And so just to give you an illustration, this is from the first edition. This is from the second edition. I happen to like the pictures in the first edition. And so, but for those of you who are putting together presentations, be aware that both of these are out there. The data is basically the same in many cases, but it does give you an idea of what's what. And this is an interest. This is from the second edition of the atlas. This data is at least 15 years old, but it gives you some idea where dentists are going. And it's interesting. They should have, I guess they do have Brazil in there. There are lots of folks, lots of Brazilian dentists in the States. At one time, there were lots of South African dentists in the States. Back in the late 70s and early 80s, lots of South Africans, when things were changing there politically and culturally, lots of dentists left South Africa, and a lot of them came to the United States. You know, that arrow is not there anymore because that has changed over the last 30 years. But it just gives you an idea of what's what. And we all know that this is the enemy. But we have to, again, keep this in context. Why? Because, number one, we know, and yesterday I think we saw this picture of Coke is helping to sponsor the dental clinic. Was that yours? Yeah. And so that, you know, it helps to sponsor. That's great. But the thing is, there's still the enemy. Why? Because it doesn't matter. You go down any unpaved road in any country, and if there's a store there, there's Coke or Pepsi in that store. You know, there may be rum, there may be other things, but there's always Coke and Pepsi. And so they really have, you know, significant market penetration. So, you know, secondly, when you're hungry and you don't have a lot of money, sugar is cheap. And so, you know, if you just have, and we look at this in the Dominican, you just have a few pesos in your pocket and you're hungry, you know, you can't go and get, say, a bowl of sancocho or something like that. You'll just go to the vendor on the corner and get some penny candy and pop it in your mouth. It helps you right then, but it's not going to help you down the road. So again, you know, there is no question that you know, culturally we've got to deal with this. We also know that as countries change to a more Western society, what happens? Number one, decay rates go way up, and second, they get fat and diabetic. I mean, those are the things that basically happen in countries like that. Again, this is from the second edition, similar types of information. But this is what we're looking at. You look at low income versus high income areas. Low income areas, there's lots of unmet need. High income areas, there's still unmet need, no question about that, but certainly there's a lot more need that has been addressed. So dental caries, you know, looking at it all over the world. And in some countries there is no data for particularly you look at sub-Saharan Africa. There's a lot of countries that there's very little data on the actual caries rates in various places. And so this is just a blow up of the one I just showed you, and this is it from the second edition, which just gives you an idea of global tooth decay. Whereas in the low income areas, lots of decay, very little fillings. In the high income areas, still a fair amount of decay, lots of filled areas, and a few missing teeth thrown in there. Again, use these just to kind of set the table as we're talking about the global issues. Fluoridated water, again, we're looking at it from a very narrow perspective. Yeah, developed countries have fluoridated water, but even in the States, I know you guys follow the fluoride wars in the United States. It showed the anti-fluoridationists yesterday. I'd never seen the lady in the pink bikini, by the way, but I was, that was an interesting picture. But it is the most effective the single most effective public health measure ever in the history of health. And so the fact that there's some people who still fight it is it's beyond me, but I understand. Everybody's got their own opinions. This is not in the second edition. This is only in the first edition, but this is a great illustration looking at how affordable is toothpaste and the number of days it takes to buy your toothpaste for the year. In Japan, it takes basically just a little bit of work to be able to afford a tube of toothpaste. So this is what, 0.9 hours, 0.09 hours. And so it's in the USA is about the same as 1/10 of 1 hour. So you got 6 minutes of work to afford a tube of toothpaste. You go to Zambia, it takes a month to be able to afford a tube of toothpaste. And so as you're working, one of the things that we have done is we don't give out toothpaste anymore. Why? Because as you're trying to teach people to take care of their teeth, if they associate, well, I can't clean my teeth because I don't have any toothpaste, if they don't think they need toothpaste in the first place, and you really don't. And it's nice to have the fluoride. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that not having toothpaste is better, but the point is, yeah, teach them how to brush their teeth with water or salt and water, and that'll be as effective. And if they don't have toothbrushes, teach them to use chew sticks. Why not? I mean, all you care about is mechanically disrupting the biofilm, mechanically disrupting the plaque. And so keep it as simple as possible in certain areas, because again, it's their context. And it was funny because what would happen was we would give out toothbrushes to the kids when we were in the Dominican. And they'd take the toothbrushes. At the end of the day, we go down to the store. And what the kids were doing is they were taking the toothbrushes to the store and trading them in for what? Candy. Exactly. So we stopped just handing out toothbrushes all over the place, because it certainly was counterproductive. Other types of fluoride, you guys are familiar with this. We talked about fluoridated salt yesterday. But that's something, again, just to be aware, look at the context. The context will definitely change. Now, this is from the second edition. I don't know if the people, I don't want to say this, but I don't know if the people in Italy don't brush their teeth, or they just, that there's no data for how well the people in Italy brush their teeth. But this is from the second edition of the Atlas. But the point is, even in developed countries, oral hygiene is all over the map. Even in areas where we think people are better educated, people, quote unquote, should know better, we still have certain issues. And the other thing I just want to quickly mention is overweight and obesity. And this is an epidemic crisis now in the United States. No question about that. The diabetes, you're looking now, half the kids in the U.S. are overweight or obese. A third of them are going to be diabetic. We don't have enough money. Well, we don't have any money now anyway. We owe ourselves to the Chinese and some other people. But the point is, we are basically creating all kinds of systematic problems for ourselves as far as health goes. And societies, whether it's European society, in some of your countries, your tax rate, 70% or whatever it is, that's still not enough money. And so, to be able to deal with this, there's only one way to deal with all this stuff, and that is to basically, focus on prevention. And why do dentists care about that? Those of you who are involved in treating periodontal disease know that periodontal disease and obesity, periodontal disease and diabetes, all those things are related to each other. And so sometimes we are the contact with our patients. They don't go to the physician, but they do come to the dentist in a lot of cases. And so that's where we can perhaps shape the discussion a little bit differently, but also in other countries, as diets are changing, as countries are becoming more modern and more westernized, it does create a certain set of problems that these countries are going to be ill-equipped to manage. And even the developed countries are ill-equipped to manage effectively.